Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends and fellow dreamer. Today I want to talk about something that affects every single one of us. It's something that holds us back, tears us apart, and stops us from growing, something we don't often speak about, but it lurks in our hearts and minds. I'm talking about hate. The question is, why do people hate? The world is vast and each of us is unique. We come from different backgrounds, cultures, and experiences. But one thing binds us all together: we are human. And with our humanity comes both love and pain. But somewhere along the way, we often choose to let the pain shape us. We forget that our hearts were made to love, to heal, and to connect. Yet in our ignorance, fear, and insecurities, we sometimes let hate creep in. Hate doesn't just appear overnight, it builds. It grows in the cracks of misunderstandings, miscommunications, and differences. It's born when we feel threatened, when we believe that someone else's success or happiness diminishes our own. When we refuse to understand another person's story, we turn to hate. And when we're afraid of the unfamiliar, the unknown, or what we cannot control, hate can feel like a shield. But here's the thing: hate is a prison. It traps us, locks us in a cage of bitterness, and keeps us from seeing the beauty and the diversity around us. Hate clouds our vision and stops us from connecting with the very people who might help us heal, grow, and see the world differently. It isolates us from love. Now, I'm not saying that life doesn't bring challenges. I'm not saying that people don't hurt us. I'm not saying that pain is easy. But I am saying that hate is never the answer. When we allow hatred to dictate our actions, we diminish our own capacity to heal. We become prisoners of our past hurts, of our own fears. We let them define us. So what if we decided to change that? What if, instead of hating, we chose to understand? What if, instead of closing our hearts, we opened them to the possibility of connection, of learning from each other, and of healing together? We would no longer be trapped by our differences, but empowered by them. Think about it. Every time we choose understanding over hate, we create a ripple of change. Every time we choose kindness over judgment, we shift the world toward love. It's not easy, I know. It's not something that happens overnight. But the first step is awareness, the awareness that hate doesn't define us. We define ourselves by the love we give, by the compassion we show, and by the bridges we build instead of walls. So let us not be the generation that perpetuates hate. Let us be the generation that chooses to heal, to learn, and to rise above. Let us turn our pain into strength, our struggles into resilience, and our differences into unity. Let us not be afraid to embrace the beauty in the diversity that surrounds us. Because, my friends, at the end of the day, it is love that conquers all. And love, unlike hate, knows no bounds. It connects us all across cultures, across differences, across pain. Hate is often born from a deep-rooted fear, one that may arise from a sense of insecurity or misunderstanding. It's the response to the unknown, to what seems unfamiliar or what we cannot control. When we don't fully understand something or someone, fear often takes the place of curiosity. Fear, when left unchecked, breeds distrust, and distrust, in turn, creates hate. The more we fear something, the more we resist it, and the more we resist, the more likely we are to project negative feelings toward it. We may hate not because of an inherent dislike, but because we fear what we do not understand. We fear that which challenges our worldview, or worse, threatens our sense of identity. This fear manifests in many ways. It can appear when we encounter someone from a different background with different beliefs, or when we face something we have never been exposed to before. The unfamiliar challenges our preconceived notions, and instead of embracing it, we turn inward, defending ourselves from what we perceive as a threat. This is where hate begins. It's the knee-jerk reaction to protect ourselves from something that feels unsafe. It's the walls we build around our hearts, not because we want to be unkind, but because we don't know how to respond to that which we cannot control or predict. Fear is a primal instinct, one that has served us well throughout our evolution. It's the mechanism that alerts us to danger, that helps us survive when faced with a threat. However, when it is applied to situations where there is no actual danger, it becomes misplaced, and it can fester into something far more destructive: hate. When we fear something, we may make assumptions about it that are not based on facts or experiences, but simply on our own limited understanding. These assumptions can snowball, becoming entrenched over time, leading to beliefs that are not based on reality but on fear-driven narratives. The more we feed those beliefs, the more difficult it becomes to see things from a different perspective. Hate at its core is not a natural state of being, it's a learned response. It is not something we are born with, but something we develop as we grow, shaped by our environment, our experiences, and the influences around us. It is often passed down from generation to generation, perpetuated by those who perhaps never learned to confront their fears or challenge their prejudices. People who hate often do so because they have been taught to do so, either explicitly or implicitly through social structures, upbringing, or media. They are conditioned to fear what they do not know, and as a result, they are taught to hate what they do not understand. This cycle of fear and hatred continues, making it harder to break free and see the world in its true complexity. One of the biggest challenges when it comes to overcoming hate is the process of confronting the fears that fuel it. The first step is acknowledging that fear is at the root of our negative feelings. It's easy to say we hate someone or something because of their actions, their beliefs, or their characteristics. But what lies beneath those actions, beliefs, or characteristics? What is it that makes us so uncomfortable, so defensive? Often it's a fear of the unknown or a fear of change. We are afraid that if we allow ourselves to understand, we might have to shift our views, rethink our positions, or even change our behavior. And for many, that fear of change is enough to hold on to their hate. It feels safer, more familiar to stay in the bubble of fear and hate rather than to venture into the unknown territory of empathy and understanding. However, this kind of fear doesn't just stay within the individual, it permeates society as a whole. When large groups of people are conditioned to fear certain things, the collective mindset becomes one of suspicion, division, and hostility. This can be seen in various forms, whether it's racial prejudice, religious intolerance, or political polarization. These fears are magnified and spread through social narratives, creating an environment where hate can thrive. We see it in the way people speak about the other, those who are different from them in some way. The other becomes a symbol of what is feared, and because fear cannot exist in isolation, it must be projected outward. Those who are seen as different are labeled, dehumanized, and blamed for things that are beyond their control. This, in turn, feeds into a cycle of hate and fear, where neither side is willing to understand or empathize with the other. The effects of this kind of fear-driven hate are profound. It divides families, communities, and nations. It creates barriers that prevent us from connecting with one another on a human level. It leads to discrimination, violence, and oppression. And all of this stems from the basic human instinct to protect oneself from perceived threats. But what if we could change the narrative? What if we could teach ourselves and others to respond to fear with curiosity instead of defensiveness? What if, instead of hating the things we don't understand, we sought to learn about them, to explore them, and to embrace them as part of the beautiful complexity of the world? This is not an easy task. Confronting our fears requires courage, humility, and a willingness to be vulnerable. It's much easier to hate what we don't understand than to open ourselves up to the possibility that our fears are unfounded. It's much simpler to reject someone or something outright than to challenge our own beliefs and assumptions. But the process of confronting fear with understanding is essential if we are ever going to overcome hate. It requires us to sit with discomfort, to question our own biases, and to listen with open hearts. It requires us to acknowledge that we don't have all the answers, that there are perspectives we have never considered, and that there is much we still need to learn. At the same time, we must recognize that overcoming hate is not just an individual endeavor, it is a collective one. In a world so deeply divided by fear and misunderstanding, we need to create spaces where open dialogue and empathy are prioritized over judgment and hostility. We need to foster environments where people can come together not to argue, but to share experiences, to listen, and to understand. These spaces of understanding are where the seeds of change are planted. They allow us to move beyond our fears and into a more compassionate, inclusive world. The more we create these spaces, the more we encourage the next generation to approach differences with curiosity rather than fear, the more we can begin to unravel the layers of hatred that have been built up over time. Hate, in the end, is a barrier. It's the wall that prevents us from seeing the truth, from seeing the humanity in others, and from experiencing the beauty of diversity. When we allow fear to dictate our actions, we lock ourselves in a cage of misunderstanding. And as long as we remain in that cage, we will never know the full potential of what it means to be human. But when we step out of that cage, when we confront our fears and seek to understand, we open ourselves up to a world of possibilities, possibilities filled with love, growth, and connection. It's time to acknowledge that fear does not need to be our guide. Instead, let curiosity, compassion, and understanding lead the way. And when we do that, we will no longer have a reason to hate. Choosing understanding over hate creates a ripple of change. It is through understanding that we begin to bridge the divides that separate us, both personally and collectively. The root of many conflicts, misunderstandings, and prejudices lies in a lack of understanding. When we fail to make an effort to understand one another, we allow our assumptions, biases, and fears to dictate our actions. These emotions build walls between us, and when we stop seeing others as human beings with their own thoughts, experiences, and feelings, it becomes all too easy to categorize them as other, different, or less than. This is where hate begins to take root. But when we choose understanding, we initiate a transformative process not just for ourselves, but for the world around us. Understanding is an active choice. It requires a willingness to listen, to empathize, and to engage with others in a way that transcends our preconceived notions. It challenges us to set aside our judgments, to be open to different perspectives, and to accept that our own view of the world is not the only one that exists. It takes patience, humility, and a deep sense of curiosity about the experiences and stories that shape other people's lives. Understanding is not simply about agreeing with someone or sharing their point of view. It's about recognizing their humanity, acknowledging the complexities that come with their experiences, and respecting their right to exist as they are. It's about seeing beyond the surface and connecting with the heart of another person, regardless of their differences. When we choose understanding over hate, we are making a conscious decision to step into the lives of others, to learn from them, and to find common ground. This process might seem daunting at times, especially when we are faced with individuals or groups who challenge our beliefs, ideologies, or worldviews. But it is through understanding that we are able to grow. We learn about ourselves in the process of learning about others. We expand our own capacity for compassion, tolerance, and empathy. We begin to recognize that we are all shaped by a complex web of influences: family, culture, education, experiences that play a role in how we think, act, and perceive the world. No one is immune to the forces that shape them, and when we understand this, we open ourselves to deeper connections. It's important to understand that choosing understanding does not mean we abandon our values or beliefs. We can still hold firm to our principles while being open to understanding those who might see things differently. In fact, when we approach others with an open mind and a compassionate heart, we find that we are more capable of defending our values with respect and clarity. Understanding allows us to engage in meaningful, productive dialogue without the need for hostility or defensiveness. It helps us to communicate in ways that promote mutual respect rather than division. By understanding the perspective of others, we can better articulate our own views in a way that is non-confrontational and open to conversation. In this way, choosing understanding creates an environment in which dialogue flourishes and hate begins to dissipate. The ripple effect of understanding is far-reaching. When we make the decision to understand, we not only transform our own interactions but also influence the communities and environments we are part of. Understanding spreads from one person to another, encouraging others to choose empathy, compassion, and dialogue over judgment, fear, and hate. When we listen with the intent to understand, we create spaces where others feel safe to share their stories, where diverse perspectives are welcomed, and where the voices of those who are often marginalized are given a platform. This fosters a sense of belonging, and when people feel understood and valued, they are more likely to contribute positively to the community. Understanding, therefore, is not just an individual act, but a collective one that can change the course of entire communities, nations, and even the world. The power of understanding lies in its ability to dismantle the walls that separate us. It teaches us that difference does not equal threat, and that diversity is not something to fear, but something to celebrate. It allows us to see the richness in the variety of human experiences and to appreciate the beauty in our shared humanity. When we make the effort to understand, we move away from the divisive narratives that encourage us to see others as enemies or competitors. We begin to see them as equals, as people who, just like us, are navigating the complexities of life, trying to make sense of their own challenges, hopes, and dreams. This shift in perspective is revolutionary, as it breaks down the binary notions of us versus them and replaces them with the recognition that we are all interconnected. Hate, on the other hand, perpetuates division. It thrives on fear, ignorance, and misunderstanding. Hate blinds us to the reality of others' experiences, reducing them to stereotypes and labels. When we hate, we close ourselves off from the possibility of growth, connection, and transformation. We lock ourselves into a limited view of the world and refuse to entertain the idea that there may be other ways of seeing and understanding things. Hate creates an environment where people retreat into their own echo chambers, surrounded by others who reinforce their biases and fears. This self-imposed isolation prevents progress and fosters an atmosphere of hostility that discourages cooperation and peaceful coexistence. Choosing understanding over hate is not always easy. It requires us to confront our own biases, to challenge the assumptions we've held for years, and to step into uncomfortable spaces where we may be forced to rethink long-held beliefs. It can be difficult to set aside our anger or frustration, especially when we feel threatened or misunderstood. But the reward for choosing understanding is profound. It opens up a world of possibilities, not just for personal growth, but for the creation of a more compassionate and just society. Understanding allows us to bridge divides, to heal wounds, and to build relationships that transcend boundaries. It's important to remember that understanding is a skill, one that can be cultivated over time. It requires practice, patience, and intentionality. The more we engage in conversations with others who are different from us, the more we practice listening with empathy and responding with kindness, the more natural understanding becomes. By making the effort to understand others, we begin to change the culture around us. We set an example for others to follow, demonstrating that understanding, not hate, is the key to moving forward. Through this collective effort, we create a ripple effect that transforms individuals, communities, and societies, making the world a more peaceful, compassionate, and connected place. The choice to understand is a choice to embrace the richness of life in all its diversity. It is a choice to see the value in every person, to recognize the inherent dignity of every human being, and to create a world where love and compassion can thrive. By choosing understanding over hate, we become catalysts for change, helping to create a future where all people are treated with the respect and kindness they deserve. The ability to heal is intrinsic to our nature, and love is the most powerful catalyst for that healing. Every individual carries with them wounds, whether physical, emotional, or psychological, that can shape their worldview and behavior. These wounds can come from many sources: childhood trauma, personal loss, societal rejection, or even the deep-seated prejudices and injustices we witness or experience throughout life. Often these wounds are invisible to others, hidden behind walls of defense, fear, or anger. Yet, despite their hidden nature, these wounds affect how we relate to the world and to those around us. They influence the way we form relationships, how we interact with others, and sometimes they shape our capacity for love itself. When we allow hate to take root, it is often a response to these wounds, a misguided attempt to protect ourselves from further pain. But true healing, the kind that allows us to move forward, is found not in harboring resentment or anger, but in offering and receiving love. Love has the profound ability to heal because it allows us to be vulnerable, to face our pain, and to rebuild from the inside out. When we open ourselves to love, we are not just opening our hearts to others, but to the possibility of healing. This is where the real power of love lies, in its capacity to soften the sharp edges of our wounds, to take the broken pieces of our past and reconstruct them into something new and whole. Healing through love is a process that requires time, patience, and often an enormous amount of courage. It requires us to confront our fears, to acknowledge the scars that remain, and to choose to move forward with a sense of hope and trust, despite the pain we may still feel. The process of healing through love begins within. Often the most difficult wounds to heal are the ones we inflict upon ourselves. We are our harshest critics, holding on to guilt, shame, and regret long after the events that caused these feelings have passed. When we choose love, we choose to forgive ourselves, to let go of the self-blame that binds us to our past mistakes, and to make room for compassion and understanding. By loving ourselves in this way, we acknowledge that we are worthy of healing, of growth, and of peace. Self-love does not mean self-indulgence or self-centeredness. It means treating ourselves with the same kindness, patience, and empathy that we would offer to a loved one who is hurting. It is only when we love ourselves that we are able to fully embrace love in its many forms. Love also creates the space for forgiveness both of ourselves and of others. When we choose love, we choose to release the hold that resentment and bitterness can have on our hearts. These negative emotions keep us tethered to past hurt, preventing us from moving forward. The act of forgiveness, while difficult, is essential for healing. It does not mean that we condone the actions that caused us harm, nor does it mean that we forget the pain we experienced. Forgiveness is about letting go of the need for revenge or justice and finding peace within ourselves. It is a choice to no longer allow the actions of others to control our emotional well-being. Love enables us to free ourselves from the chains of resentment, creating room for healing and growth. And healing through love also requires us to extend compassion to others, especially those who have caused us pain. This is often the most challenging aspect of love, the ability to empathize with those who have wronged us or who may harbor hate toward us. But when we can offer love and understanding, even to those who may not deserve it, we break the cycle of hate and division. By extending love, we refuse to let others' actions dictate our emotional state. We refuse to allow hate to control us. Instead, we choose to rise above it, to rise with love, knowing that by doing so, we are setting ourselves free from the hold of bitterness. In relationships, love has the power to heal wounds that may seem too deep to overcome. Whether in families, friendships, or romantic partnerships, love offers the possibility of reconciliation. When we truly love someone, we are willing to listen to their pain, to understand their perspective, and to work through the challenges that arise. Love allows us to be patient with one another, to give each other the space to heal, and to support each other in ways that create mutual growth. This healing process requires vulnerability, the ability to show up as our true selves, to share our fears, insecurities, and vulnerabilities with others. In turn, others can do the same. And through this shared vulnerability, a bond is formed, one that is strong enough to withstand the trials and tribulations of life. However, the healing power of love is not limited to personal relationships. It extends to the wider community, to the collective healing of societies that have been scarred by injustice, inequality, and hate. Hate isolates us, while love connects us. This idea is not merely a philosophical concept, but a truth that has stood the test of time. When we allow ourselves to harbor feelings of hate, we put up barriers, walls that separate us from others, making it nearly impossible to experience the depth of connection that humanity is capable of. Hate forces us to turn inward, to focus solely on our fears, judgments, and biases. It pulls us away from the world around us, making it difficult to engage in meaningful relationships or to build the kind of community that nurtures growth, understanding, and compassion. It makes the world smaller, darker, and colder. On the other hand, love does the opposite. Love creates bridges where there were once walls, opening doors to conversations and interactions that can lead to mutual understanding. Love, by its very nature, invites us to expand our worldview and step into the lives of others, to see the world through their eyes and to accept the diversity of experiences that exist. When we love, we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, to connect on a deeper level with people, to share joy, pain, laughter, and sorrow. In a world filled with complexities, love is what binds us together and allows us to see our shared humanity. This process of connection isn't always easy, particularly when faced with people or ideas that we don't understand. It can feel safer to cling to our biases, to reject those who are different from us, to assume that they don't have anything to offer. But by doing so, we limit ourselves. We miss out on the richness that comes from diversity of culture, thought, and experience. These differences are not meant to divide us, but to enrich our lives. When we allow hate to shape our perceptions of others, we close ourselves off to the possibility of learning, growing, and transforming as individuals. We become insular, trapped in a narrow vision of the world. When we love, however, we make space for others. We begin to see them not as threats or enemies, but as human beings with their own stories, struggles, and dreams. Love allows us to embrace the differences in others, recognizing that those differences make the world more colorful and vibrant. It teaches us to listen, not to judge, to learn rather than dismiss. Love invites us to step outside our comfort zones, to engage with people who may not look like us, who may not think like us, but who share the same basic human needs: the need to be heard, the need to be seen, and the need to be understood. The transformative power of love can be seen in the simplest acts of kindness. A smile, a helping hand, an open heart. These small gestures ripple out, creating a wave of goodwill that can spread far beyond our immediate reach. Each time we choose love over hate, we participate in a collective effort to make the world a better place. We create an environment where people are encouraged to show up as their authentic selves, free from fear of judgment or rejection. In this space, healing can occur, relationships can thrive, and communities can be built. Hate, on the other hand, has the opposite effect. It isolates not just individuals, but entire groups of people. It creates division, making it harder for us to see the common threads that bind us together. It promotes an us versus them mentality, where people are reduced to labels and stereotypes, where empathy is replaced by suspicion. When hate takes root, it breeds mistrust, violence, and fear. And the more hate spreads, the more we become disconnected from each other, lost in our own pain and anger, unable to see the humanity in those who differ from us. This isolation is not just emotional, it has practical consequences. It prevents collaboration, stifles creativity, and undermines the collective strength that comes from working together toward a common goal. The world becomes a less hopeful place, a place where opportunities for growth and progress are squandered because we are too busy fighting among ourselves. But love creates a different world. It invites us to come together, to pool our resources, and to share our knowledge and experiences. It is the glue that holds families, friendships, and communities together. It encourages us to break free from the chains of fear and judgment and to see each other as we truly are: human beings with unique gifts, talents, and perspectives. Love enables us to collaborate, to build, to solve problems, and to create solutions that benefit everyone, not just a select few. It fosters an environment where diversity is celebrated, where differences are seen as strengths, not weaknesses. Love makes us better as individuals and as a society. In a world filled with so many divisions, the antidote to hate is not just tolerance, but love. Tolerance may allow us to coexist, but it is love that allows us to thrive together. It is love that enables us to look past our differences and see the person in front of us, to acknowledge their struggles, their joys, and their humanity. When we love, we stop seeing the world in binary terms, right and wrong, good and bad, us and them, and instead begin to appreciate the complexity and nuance of the human experience. We recognize that everyone has a story, and that story is worth hearing, worth understanding, worth respecting. This is not to say that love is always easy. It requires vulnerability, patience, and an openness to the possibility that we may not always be right, that we may need to change or grow. It challenges us to look at ourselves and question our biases, to confront the parts of us that are uncomfortable or outdated. But that is the beauty of love. It pushes us to become better versions of ourselves. It forces us to confront our fears and prejudices and to work toward healing the wounds that have been caused by years of misunderstanding and mistrust. Love doesn't just connect us to others, it connects us to ourselves, helping us to grow and evolve in ways that hate never could. Love is the force that drives change, that inspires revolutions, and that makes us believe in the possibility of a better world. It is the light that shines in the darkness, showing us the way forward. When we choose love over hate, we are not only making the world a more connected place, we are making it a more beautiful one, a place where compassion, understanding, and empathy reign supreme. Love is not just an emotion, it is a force that can transform the world, one person, one relationship, and one community at a time. We define ourselves by the love and compassion we give, not by hate. This concept challenges us to look beyond the external markers of our identity, the labels we wear, the roles we play, the categories into which society places us, and focus instead on the internal values that shape our character. In a world that often seems to prioritize achievement, status, and material wealth, it's easy to forget that our true identity is not defined by what we have or how others perceive us, but by how we treat others and the love we offer to those around us. At the heart of human existence lies a fundamental truth: our capacity for love and compassion is what makes us human. We are not defined by the wealth we accumulate or the power we wield, but by our ability to empathize with others, to show kindness, to offer understanding, and to be there for one another in times of need. The more we nurture these qualities within ourselves, the more we realize that our purpose in life is not to amass things or win accolades, but to make a positive difference in the lives of others. Love and compassion are the forces that bind us together as a community. When we offer love to others, we not only uplift them, but also enhance our own sense of self-worth. There's a profound sense of fulfillment that comes from knowing we have had a positive impact on someone else's life. The love we give creates a ripple effect, inspiring others to act with kindness and empathy in return. In this way, the more love we give, the more love we receive, not necessarily in a direct or transactional sense, but in the sense that we create an environment where love becomes the foundation of all interactions. In contrast, when we allow hate to define us, we become consumed by negativity. Hate blinds us to the humanity of others, making it difficult to see beyond the surface. It encourages us to view people through the lens of our fears and prejudices, rather than through the lens of empathy and understanding. Hate isolates us from the world and from each other. It fuels division and discord, creating barriers that prevent us from connecting with others on a deeper level. When we let hate define us, we cut ourselves off from the very things that make life meaningful: connection, empathy, and love. We begin to see ourselves as separate from others, distinct in our differences rather than united in our shared humanity. We often define ourselves by external factors: the things we possess, the titles we hold, the places we come from. But none of these things truly define who we are at the core. Our worth as human beings is not determined by the job we do, the car we drive, or the house we live in. These are just the trappings of life, fleeting and temporary. What defines us is how we treat others, how we make them feel, and how we respond to the suffering and needs of the world around us. It's easy to get lost in the pursuit of success, to chase after material gain and external validation, but these things ultimately leave us feeling empty. They can never provide the lasting fulfillment that love and compassion offer. The love we give, however, is what shapes our identity in the truest sense. When we show love, we become more than just individuals pursuing personal gain. We become part of a larger story, a story of kindness, generosity, and connection. We find meaning in the simple acts of reaching out to others, of offering a listening ear, of being present in the lives of those we care about. These are the things that define us, not the things we accumulate or the titles we wear. When we choose love over hate, we begin to see the world through a different lens. We start to understand that our purpose is not to win at the expense of others, but to lift them up, to make their lives better in whatever way we can. In choosing love, we break free from the constraints of fear and judgment. We no longer feel the need to protect ourselves by tearing others down. Instead, we become a source of support, a safe harbor for those in need, and a beacon of light in a world that can often feel dark and uncertain. The love we offer to others is a reflection of the love we have for ourselves. When we embrace love, we acknowledge our own worth, our own humanity, and our own capacity for goodness. In defining ourselves by love and compassion, we acknowledge that the most important part of life is not what we achieve individually, but how we make others feel. We recognize that our connection with others is the true source of happiness and fulfillment. It's easy to get caught up in the pursuit of success, to focus on what we can get out of life, but when we shift our focus to what we can give, everything changes. Love becomes the force that drives us, the foundation upon which we build our lives. It is love that motivates us to be better, to do better, and to make the world a better place. When we live with love in our hearts, we no longer measure our success by the things we possess or the recognition we receive. Instead, we measure our success by the impact we have on others, by the kindness we show, and by the difference we make in the lives of those around us. This is how we define ourselves. Our legacy is not the wealth we accumulate or the accolades we receive, but the love we give and the lives we touch. The more we invest in love, the more we discover about who we truly are and what we are capable of. By allowing love and compassion to define us, we find our true purpose, one that transcends the superficial aspects of life and connects us to something much deeper and more meaningful. Choosing love over hate is a conscious decision, a choice we must make every day. It's a choice to prioritize kindness, understanding, and empathy over division, judgment, and fear. It's a choice to see the humanity in others, to extend a hand of compassion, and to work toward building a world that is united, not divided.